Nice to be here.
It's a pleasure to see you and be with
What
you.
made you organize Project Zero Institute in Spain?
Well, it was the idea of educators who had already been familiar with Project Zero ideas. So for many years, David Perkins and other colleagues of his have been doing critical thinking work in Spain. And probably in the last 10 years, more and more teachers have been using Teaching for Understanding, which is a framework that grew out of Project Zero, and visible thinking and other kinds of work. And so the timing felt right, I think, for educators here. They approached us and said, we would like to get a community of educators together. How can we do that? Our experience is if we do an event, we can generate interest and we can create an identity of a community. So it came from educators here, and it took about 4 years to sort of think about and then plan it, and then, well, and here we are. But I have to tell you, I think you know, this was the largest event we've done 15 international conferences. This is the largest. So I think that speaks to a lot of the interest of educators in Spain.
So what do you think? I've known Project Zero for many years now.
Yes.
It's
Why aren't you there with us?
I know.
You could be.
Maybe. But what's the secret of your success? Why you get so strongly in countries, in so many different cultures, different contexts, different economical situations?
Well, I think one of the secrets is that the kinds of questions Project Zero asks are about human potential. So our work asks fundamentally, as human beings, what are our inherent capabilities? And we call those potentials. So things like thinking, creativity, learning, ethics, morals. These are what makes us human. And the questions we ask often question the fundamental assumptions about those fundamental potentials. So for many years, intelligence was thought as a fixed, genetic construct of humanity. Well, our work, Howard Gardner led that work, revealed that that's not the case. I mean, we can think of intelligence in multiple ways. So I think one of the reasons for this, if you want to call it success, success is probably the wrong word now that I think about it. I mean, for the impact is a better word, is because many populations, whether they be marginalized populations, whether they be more majority populations, they're realizing that the current structures of learning, schools say, don't work. And those structures were built on fundamental assumptions, thinking, learning, creativity, etc., that are outdated. Our work brings new answers, fresher ideas to those questions of thinking and learning. So I think that's why. In my experience, Project Zero is not as well known, say. There are a lot of other movements in the world, but the work that we do tends to bring focus to aspects that cut across race, class, religiosity. They go to the essence of humanity. So I think that's a spiritual kind of an answer.
I feel from my experience with Project Zero that one of the secrets is that you have made accessible the research to teachers.
Well, that's
all over the world.
And many of us are educators.
That's right.
I'm a former public school teacher. Many of the people there, not all, but many of the people there know the craft of teaching and learning. So there is an emphasis on elegant insights. Elegant, so that when an insight is rendered, say around cognition and thinking, it gets distilled in such a way that it's accessible. And not just for educators, even educators, that's a huge diversity right there, but people in different professions and families and the students themselves. So we do spend a lot of our energies on trying to craft elegant insights to research.
For people who don't know Project Zero, if any, could you describe how it works, how nowadays Project Zero is organized?
Oh yeah, so Project Zero has been around for now 51 years, and it's organized, we are a research center, so everything we do is organized around projects. We are completely funded on grants. So the university is not funding us at all. We're looking to foundations, we're looking to ministries of education, philanthropists to fund research lines. So we're about 35 researchers organized around, today, 24 research projects. And so many of us are working on multiple projects. We're not huge, we're kind of a smaller research center. And we're working in 19 different countries. So for example, there's a project right now which is looking at the nature of playfulness. I mean, another potential. And it's looking at what does that look like in the context of Denmark, and what does that look like in the context of South Africa? Two very different cultural contexts, working with different kinds of populations in those two. So that's the kind of work that we would do. And if you were to walk into our offices, we're all in one space, you would see us. Some people said that when they walk into our offices, it looks like a really exciting school. Because you walk in and we make our ideas and learning visible. There's a lot of draft and prototypes on the wall of different research insights, as well as other kinds of exhibits of our work. So it's very open, and you'll see a lot of people kind of moving around between meetings and our research projects. So it's a pretty vibrant place.
Does Project Zero collaborate with any governments or any policies of education? Have any impact on systematic change?
Oh yeah, so the answer is yes. There are traditionally good lines of collaboration with large-scale kinds of movements like the International Baccalaureate, which is sort of a large curricular movement. So we have very close connections with people who design, write those kinds of curriculums. It's not an endorsement of their curriculums, but there are sections like global competencies, which is part of they've picked up some of our work and they've recrafted the way that they design their curriculums. Other ministries of education we've been involved with. Historically, we have connections to ministries of education in South Africa, Venezuela, back when it was easy to work with Venezuela, not so much now. Ministry of Education in Colombia. I'm trying to think actually if we have any. Yes, right now we have an active research project with the Ministry of Education in Italy, which is looking at working with their research and innovation division, that works with about 800 schools on how to support innovation. And we're looking at what does making learning and thinking look like in the context of public high schools in Italy. So, and that the idea of that project, which is funded by the Ministry of Education of Italy, is to render out practices that could scale out through the public schools of Italy.
Project Zero probably has researched more about learning than anybody else. What do you think about the impact technology is having in the learning of children in schools nowadays?
Well, I have a 9 and an 11-year-old. I can tell you anecdotally that the ecology of learning for my children is fundamentally different than mine when I grew up, and it's very exciting. I mean, my daughter likes to make jewelry. She sees videos on YouTube. She has people who follow her videos and give advice. She learns a tremendous amount in the digital ecology. I think there are dangers. There are things we have to be very, very careful about. But in terms of accessing information, there's a real opportunity for, and I think it already is, to seismically shift the power structures of schools, which I think is a good thing, frankly. In terms of identity, I think that there's some puzzles we have to work on. I mean, on the one hand, I think students can express identities and connect with other students in very new in ways that 15, 20 years ago were impossible. I mean, there are students, because they have shared interests, connecting in countries from all over the world, whether the interest be soccer or jewelry making or following K-pop bands, whatever they are, but kids can connect in new ways. So that's interesting. However, the question of in what ways are they deepening their kinds of relationships, that's still a puzzle. I mean, does it make any sense to say I have 20,000 friends? I don't think so. So the question of what does it mean to be a friend or to be in relation to other people I think, is a big puzzle.
Do you think the ethical issues will gain importance in the curriculums in the future?
I think so. I mean, again, with technology, here's an opportunity. We have research projects that are looking at how to scaffold perspective taking and empathy across cultures through digital life. So there's a real opportunity. However, what's the ethical? There's a lot of ethical dilemmas in that. I mean, the other dilemmas are a lot of violent and harmful interactions that happen in digital life now. So bullying, what they call in English sexting, which is, sharing pictures, nude pictures, which kids are unfortunately doing. So, the kinds of dilemmas that my child, as 9 and 11, are facing are serious. So there's good and there's some real puzzles around technology.
Some would argue that the pressure that PISA and international testing, pressure is putting on systems is not helping to make that change that the curriculum needs. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what I think, and then I'll tell you what we're doing. So, what do I think? Absolutely, the translation of standardized testing has pushed practices that are toxic down into classrooms and into faculty, and even among schools. So, I loved I heard you say that we need to really reshape the relationships in the field, school to school, teacher to teacher, if we want possibilities to emerge. And I think the forces of testing actually makes it harder because now there's a threat. And the idea that we're going to explore some new relationship when schools are competing, if you will, or as teachers are competing in some ways and how they get evaluated is very, very dangerous. So that's what I think about it. What are we doing? Well, for many, many years, we at Project Zero have just been vocal critics. Well, we've changed that. Now we believe that we should try to engage the very institutions that are designing those. So we are in conversations and doing work with ETS. To try to help them think about 5-10 years from now, what does it mean to assess creativity? Because right now they don't know. We are in conversations with the OECD. We're in working groups with the OECD, helping them design the next generation of PISAs. What does it mean to assess global competence? So rather than just criticize and I think the criticism is merited. There are toxic things happening. How could we actually create a new relationship? As we're saying, we have to create new relationships.
Are you optimistic about the future of education? You hold an institute, don't you? It's called the Future of Learning.
The degree to which education resides in the interactions between human beings, and we can evaluate that in a one-on-one or the relationships among children, I'm optimistic. Because we know that it's a relational quality. The field of education, I remain hopeful, but as humans, we have the wings of angels, as they say, and the darkest of devils, right? So we have some very bad components of interacting with one another. So I remain hopeful. There are some beautiful things going on in the world. The relationships between teachers and students, families and teachers. I'd like to see more of it. And I think part of the reason of doing these kinds of gatherings is to build the awareness that there are really beautiful things happening in the world.
Wolters Kluwer, tu mejor socio.